I'm Elena Vance, and the burning sensation on my left cheek was the only thing keeping me grounded as Mr. Sterling, the family lawyer, leaned over the mahogany table and stared directly at my mother. The air in the grand dining room at Aspen Ridge didn't just cool down, it froze solid. 45 relatives held their breath simultaneously, the silence so heavy you could hear the antique clock ticking in the hallway. No one had ever interrupted Evelyn Vance like that. But in that suspended second, her rage didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the secret trust Mr. Sterling was about to unveil. Everything had detonated just minutes prior during our annual family gathering. My sister, Bianca, had stood up, her face twisted with a mix of greed and desperation, and slammed a stack of legal documents onto the table. She demanded I sign over the deed to the $12.5 million estate immediately, claiming it was her birthright. I refused. That was when my mother shot up from her chair and slapped me, the sound cracking like a whip across the room. She hissed that the property would be seized by the family one way or another. That's when Mr. Sterling spoke, his voice low but cutting through the tension like a razor. "Do you even know who the real owner is?" Instantly, the room went dead silent. Every pair of eyes, cousins, aunts, uncles, shifted from my mother to me. If you've ever been the black sheep surrounded by wolves in your own home, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss how inheritance brings out the true colors of people you thought you knew. Welcome to Karma's Coils. Let's rewind to this morning. That morning, I navigated the winding roads lined with copper-colored aspen leaves on my way to the Aspen Ridge compound. The beauty of the valley usually calmed me, but today, the mountains felt like they were closing in. I had flown in from Paris Fashion Week late the night before, my body still humming with jet lag. I was still wearing the sharp charcoal blazer and wide-leg trousers from my final runway fitting, a stark contrast to the flannel and denim usually worn in these parts. My vintage leather suitcase in the trunk wasn't packed with hiking boots or warm sweaters, but with delicate silk samples, sketches for the spring collection, and a sense of dread I couldn't shake. The old gravel driveway crunched loudly under my tires as I pulled up to the main lodge. The place looked exactly as it had in my childhood memories, tall A-frame windows, reflecting the steel-gray lake, wood smoke curling lazily from the massive stone chimney. But the air felt different. It was heavier, charged with a static electricity that had nothing to do with the approaching storm. Grandpa Arthur's annual family gathering was already underway when I pushed open the heavy oak doors to the grand dining room. The scene was almost theatrical. A long, polished wooden table was set for more than 45 relatives. Crystal goblets caught the dim afternoon light, and the savory scent of roasted sage turkey and spiced pumpkin pie filled the vaulted space. Mother sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, a glass of expensive Chardonnay clutched in her hand like a weapon. My sister Bianca was seated immediately to her right, arms crossed over her chest, lips pressed into a thin, white line. My cousin Marcus hovered behind them, nodding sycophantically at whatever Bianca was whispering into his ear. As I took an empty seat near the drafty end of the table, a ripple of murmurs moved through the room. I caught fragments of sentences. The famous one finally graces us. Always off at those Fashion Week parties. Barely visits the old man's grave. I kept my face neutral, a mask I had perfected over years of dealing with difficult clients and high-stakes negotiations. I had heard remixes of this same song for years, but today, the volume was turned up. Conversations were light at first, like the clinking of cheap silverware. Cousins talked about new trucks, aunts compared recipes, and uncles bragged about their latest hunting trips. But I felt the shift coming, like the sudden drop in temperature before a blizzard hits the valley. Bianca cleared her throat loudly and leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine with the precision of a predator. The room quieted almost instantly. She started small, commenting on how nice it was that the Aspen Ridge compound had stayed in the family for so long, how lucky we were to have such a legacy. Then she turned the spotlight directly on me. "You're so busy with runways in Paris and Milan," she said, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "You hardly ever come back. It only makes sense for the estate to go to someone who actually lives here, who takes care of it day to day. Someone who understands the land." A few aunts nodded in agreement, their forks poised over their plates. Marcus chimed in from behind her. "Yeah, exactly. Someone who's around when the roof leaks or the dock needs fixing." I set my fork down gently, the metal making a soft clink against the china. "Grandpa's estate isn't up for discussion like that, Marcus." Bianca's eyes narrowed into slits. It should be. You're never here. You don't need all this space. You have your penthouse in Manhattan, right? The one you're always posting about on Instagram. Why be greedy? More murmurs of agreement rippled around the table like a contagion. Mother sipped her wine, watching me over the rim with a gaze that was more calculating than maternal. I stayed calm, my hands folded in my lap. Grandpa had his reasons for everything he did. It's not ours to divide up based on who shows up more often for dinner. Bianca laughed sharply, a sound that grated on my nerves. Reasons? He was old, Elena. He wasn't thinking clearly toward the end, and you took advantage of that, flying in for quick visits, sending pretty cards from Europe. Meanwhile, the rest of us were actually here, doing the work. Marcus leaned in closer. Come on, be reasonable. Sign it over. It's only fair. The room leaned in, waiting for my response. I looked straight at Bianca, my voice steady. No. Mother's chair scraped back against the hardwood floor, the sound harsh and violent. Her voice rose, trembling with indignation. You selfish girl. After everything this family has done for you, paying for your fancy schools, letting you chase dreams while the rest of us held things together here, you owe us this. Heads turned between us like spectators at a tennis match. Someone whispered, "Oh no." Bianca slid a folder across the table, the paper hissing against the wood. We even had papers drawn up. Just sign. Make it easy on yourself. I didn't touch it. I'm not signing anything. Mother's face flushed a deep, angry red. She stood fully now, hand raised. You will do what's right for this family. The slap landed hard, echoing off the high ceiling like a gunshot. Gasps spread like wildfire through the room. A few cousins covered their mouths, eyes wide with shock. Marcus smirked for a split second before looking away, feigning concern. Mother leaned in close, her breath hot against my face. You have no choice, she hissed, her voice venomous. Do what she says. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, who had been quietly observing from the side, rose slowly. He fixed his gaze on Mother and spoke just loud enough for the table to hear. Do you even know who the real owner is? The room fell completely silent. Forks froze midway to mouths. Breathing seemed to stop. Sterling didn't raise his voice further. He simply said, Let's all calm down. We'll continue this discussion when emotions aren't running so high. No one argued. Chairs pushed back one by one, scraping against the floor in a jagged rhythm. Relatives avoided eye contact as they filed out toward the living room or the deck, their conversations reduced to awkward mumbles. The heavy front door opened and closed repeatedly until only a handful remained. I stayed seated, cheek burning, staring at the untouched papers in the center of the table. As the sound of the last car faded down the Pine Line Drive, Mr. Sterling motioned for me to stay back by the fireplace in the living room. He waited until the front door clicked shut behind the final relative, then quietly closed the double doors to the dining room hallway. The fire had settled into steady embers, throwing a warm but dim glow across the worn Persian rug and the rows of framed family photos lining the mantel. Some showed Grandpa in his younger days on the lake dock, a pipe clenched between his teeth. Others captured holidays long past, before the bitterness set in. Sterling placed his leather briefcase on the low oak coffee table, clicked the latches open, and removed a thick, well-worn binder filled with tabbed sections. He sat in the armchair opposite me, adjusting his glasses before speaking. Your grandfather was always methodical, Elena. 12 years ago, right after you moved to New York to study fashion design, he established a revocable living trust. He did it discreetly through my office without telling anyone else in the family. I shifted forward on the sofa, the leather creaking softly under my weight. My mind raced back to that tiny apartment in the village, late nights sketching, first internships that paid nothing but experience. Sterling continued, turning to the first marked page. The trust transferred ownership of the entire Aspen Ridge compound, the Manhattan penthouse you used during Fashion Week, the upstate farmland he bought in the 90s, and his investment portfolio currently valued at approximately $12.5 million directly to you as the sole beneficiary. He paused to let the numbers settle in the quiet room. There are multiple protection clauses built in. No contests allowed without facing substantial legal penalties, no forced sales, no divisions. It's locked tight. I stared at the documents he slid toward me. Signatures dated 12 years earlier, notarized seals, Grandpa's careful script on marginal notes. "Why so early?" I asked quietly. I was barely 22. I hadn't proven anything yet. Mr. Sterling folded his hands on his lap, his gaze steady and warm. "That's exactly why he did it. He saw your independence as strength, not absence. You were the only one who kept real contact going. Those handmade holiday cards you designed and mailed from whatever city your shows took you to London one year, Tokyo the next. The video calls you squeezed in between fittings, even when it meant waking at dawn in Milan to catch him before dinner here. Booking last-minute flights home for his birthdays or just because you sensed he needed company." His voice softened, filled with a quiet reverence. "He told me once in confidence that you never made him feel forgotten. The others, their visits grew rarer as time passed, unless they needed something." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat growing. Grandpa had watched the family dynamics shift long before anyone else admitted it. Mother's clear preference for Bianca, the one who stayed close, who fit the expected role perfectly. Two moments stood out clearly now, like snapshots frozen in time. One sticky July when we were teens, Bianca claimed the master suite with its private deck over the water. Mother insisted it was only fair since Bianca had friends staying over. I got reassigned to the narrow guest room behind the kitchen window facing the boathouse wall. Grandpa said nothing at dinner, but later I found him on the porch staring at the lake, the moonlight reflecting off the ripples. He handed me a cold soda and sat beside me in silence for an hour. The second memory was sharper. My breakthrough chance an assistant spot at a major show in Paris, but the flight from New York would wipe out my savings. Rent was due. Portfolio prints weren't cheap. A plain envelope showed up at my door. Inside, the exact airfare amount plus extra for meals. A short note in Grandpa's handwriting, asterisk, create something the world hasn't seen yet. Asterisk, no signature needed. I never told anyone where the money came from. Sterling turned another page, the paper rustling softly. He anticipated conflict. That's why the trust was structured this way, to shield you from pressure from anyone trying to claim you didn't deserve it because you built a life elsewhere. He pointed to specific clauses, anti-contest provisions, penalties for frivolous challenges, requirements for any changes to have my sole approval. Legally, your mother and sister have no standing. They've assumed standard inheritance rules would apply after his passing, but those rules never came into play here. I traced Grandpa's initials on one corner, faint but unmistakable. At the bottom of a rider page, his handwriting again, asterisk. For Elena, she understands value beyond money. Asterisk. The weight of it hit me like a physical blow. Then all those years I thought I was just staying close out of love. Turns out Grandpa viewed it as evidence of character. Sterling gathered the copies he'd prepared for me, deeds, trust declarations, account summaries. You're in control now, Elena, but expect pushback. Today was only the beginning. I stood, the folder heavy in my arms. The fire popped once, sending a brief flare across the room. Strength I hadn't felt earlier settled in my chest, replacing the fear. I walked out of the living room, carrying the proof, fully aware that everyone else had been operating under a 12-year-old misunderstanding. Late that afternoon, I drove through the main gate and parked in front of the house by the lake. The Aspen Ridge compound was quiet now, almost unnaturally so after the earlier chaos. No other vehicles remained in the circular drive. The wind rustled through the tall pines surrounding the property, carrying the crisp scent of approaching winter. The lake water lapped gently against the private dock, a sound I had known since childhood. I stepped out of the car, gravel crunching under my shoes, and used my old key to let myself into the main house. The foyer felt unchanged, high ceilings, hardwood floors, the faint echo of footsteps. Sunlight slanted through the large windows overlooking the water, casting long patterns across the furniture. I didn't linger. I headed straight down the hallway to Grandpa's former study, the room tucked at the back with views of the boathouse and forested shoreline. Dust had settled thickly on the bookshelves lined with old nautical charts and leather-bound volumes he collected. His massive oak desk sat in the center, papers scattered haphazardly as if no one had organized anything since his passing. Empty coffee mugs ringed with stains. A few unopened envelopes piled in one corner. The space carried a sense of abandonment that hadn't been there when he was alive. I tried the top drawers, first locked, as expected. Then I moved to the floor-level cabinet on the right side, the one concealing the built-in safe he installed decades ago. Kneeling down, I entered the combination he once shared only with me, the month and year of his wedding anniversary. The mechanism clicked open smoothly. Inside, folders were packed tightly, edges curled from humidity. Bank correspondence dominated the top layer. I pulled out the heaviest file labeled simply property loans. The primary document was a mortgage agreement dated 8 years back, a substantial loan well into 6 figures secured against the full Aspen Ridge compound. Mother's signature appeared as borrower, claiming ownership based on what could only be an outdated probate copy of Grandpa's pre-trust will, the version everyone assumed was final. I scanned the terms. Interest rates reasonable at origination, but payments had become irregular. Missed deadlines noted in red stamps. Accrued penalties listed on attached schedules. Toward the back, the most recent bank letter. Final notice of default demanding immediate cure or initiation of foreclosure proceedings within the next 30 days. They had pledged collateral they no longer controlled. Further down in the safe, behind the mortgage packet, lay a plain manila envelope with future planning written in Bianca's precise handwriting on the tab. I opened it on the desk. The contents included a fully drafted deed transfer for the compound, naming Marcus as grantee. Mother's signature pre-filled, forged signatures closely enough to fool casual review, but discrepancies visible upon closer inspection, slight variations in loop height, pressure differences. Margin notes detailed rationale. Reduces inheritance tax liability through gifting structure. Allows quiet division of proceeds among core family members. Additional pages outlined intended upgrades. Complete kitchen remodel with high-end appliances. Expansion of the guest cottage for rental. Potential new floating dock system with boat lifts. Contractor bids attached. Several marked deposit paid in Bianca's hand. Mixed among these were recent credit statements, multiple cards at or near limits, charges for European shopping trips timed with my own show schedules, luxury vehicle leases, private club memberships, all predicated on eventual estate liquidity to cover balances. I spread the materials across the desk surface. Patterns emerged clearly. Spending escalated steadily as property values climbed in the area. New lines of credit opened to bridge gaps, withdrawals from other accounts to service minimums, confidence that the compound's equity would resolve everything when needed. But the trust rendered the primary security invalid from the start. The bank held a lien on air. I settled into Grandpa's old leather chair, the one positioned for lake views, armrests worn smooth from years of use. The seat still carried his faint scent of pipe tobacco. Holding the foreclosure warning letter, I pieced together the urgency behind today's confrontation. They weren't just greedy. They were desperate. Payments looming. Bank inquiries possibly already underway. My signature on a transfer to Marcus would create a paper trail suggesting legitimate ownership change, potentially delaying or complicating any challenge. I dug deeper into the safe. Another folder revealed a second equity line against the upstate farmland, also predicated on the old will assumptions. More warnings tucked inside. Overdraft notices from checking accounts used for daily expenses. The scale surprised me. Not occasional overspending, but systematic reliance on future inheritance that never materialized as expected. Renovations started but unfinished. Deposits non-refundable, obligations mounting. Sunlight faded outside, turning the lake surface from gold to gray. Shadows lengthened across the study floorboards. I photographed key pages with my phone for records, then returned everything to its original places except the most critical documents, which I secured in my bag. Standing up, the house seemed to carry extra weight, years of decisions built on a faulty foundation. The quiet no longer felt peaceful. It felt like waiting. I locked the safe, wiped away fingerprints from dust, and left the study exactly as found. The sound of tires on the gravel drive pulled me out of the study. I closed the folder in my hands and stepped into the hallway just as the front door swung open. Mother, Bianca, and Marcus walked in, faces still flushed from whatever conversations they'd had after the gathering. The air shifted immediately, heavy, charged. Bianca spotted me first. She strode forward, heels clicking sharp on the hardwood. "We're not done talking. You need to sign those papers now and end this nonsense." She stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, tight eyes narrowed. "You think you can just walk away after that scene? Everyone's upset. Fix it." Mother followed close behind, clutching her purse like a shield. Her expression softened into something practiced, eyes glistening, voice trembling. "Sweetheart, please, you're tearing this family apart. All we're asking is for you to think about us for once. After everything we've sacrificed, everything we've been through together, don't do this to us." She reached out a hand, tears starting to spill. "I can't lose this home. It's all I have left of your grandfather, of our life here. You're breaking my heart." Marcus hung back near the door, hands in pockets, gaze fixed on the floor mostly, but flicking up occasionally. He didn't speak, just watched the exchange with a tight jaw. I moved to the small side table in the entryway and set down the stack of documents I'd brought from the study, the loan files, the forged transfer draft, the bank warnings. They landed with a deliberate thud. Bianca's eyes darted to the papers. "What's that supposed to be?" I looked at each of them in turn. "I know everything." Mother froze mid-reach. Bianca's mouth opened slightly. "The bank will know soon," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Marcus, you might want to call your lawyer." Marcus shifted his weight, glancing toward the door for a second. 30 days to move out. Silence stretched thick. No questions, no elaboration from me. Bianca recovered first. Her voice rose, sharp and loud, the sound of a cornered animal. "You can't be serious. This is our home. You don't even live here. You're off jet-setting to shows while we maintain everything." She stepped closer, finger jabbing the air. "You owe us. After all the years we looked after Grandpa when you were too busy chasing fame." Mother's tears turned to sobs. She sank onto the nearby bench, hands covering her face. "How can you say that? I'm your mother. I raised you, and now you'd throw us out on the street? What kind of daughter does that?" Her voice cracked on every word, shoulders shaking. "Think about what people will say. The scandal. Please, baby, don't make me beg." Marcus finally spoke, low and uncertain. "Maybe we can work something out, split things fairly. Or..." He trailed off when I didn't respond. Bianca paced now, fury building. "This is insane. You're punishing us for what? For staying? For being here when he needed family? Sign the damn papers and let's move on." Mother reached for my arm, fingers trembling. "If you ever loved me, you won't do this. We can fix it together. Just give us time." I stood still, arms at my sides. Bianca's volume climbed higher. "You're destroying everything Grandpa built. He'd be ashamed." Mother wailed softly. "Don't let it end like this. We're all that's left." Marcus edged backward, eyes on the papers again, but saying nothing more. I didn't argue, didn't justify, didn't soften. Bianca lunged toward the table as if to grab the documents. I placed my hand flat on top. She stopped short, breathing hard. Mother looked up through tears. "At least talk to us. Explain why you're being so cruel." I held their gazes one last time. Then I turned and walked down the hall past the study, toward the back door leading to the lake path. Behind me, Bianca's shouts echoed off the walls. Mother's pleas mixed in, desperate and broken. Marcus remained silent. I didn't look back. 3 weeks later, thick envelopes from the bank started arriving at their house near Albany. I was in Manhattan when the first reports came through from the management company I'd hired. They forwarded scans of correspondence addressed to Mother official letters on bank letterhead stamped Times, urgent asterisk. The investigation began quickly, once I sent anonymous tip documents proving the compound had never been valid collateral. Auditors confirmed the trust transfer years earlier. The mortgage built on outdated assumptions became unenforceable against the lakeside property. But the fallout spread like a contagion. The bank shifted focus to other assets tied to Mother and Bianca's names. Their primary residence outside Albany, a modest but comfortable colonial they'd refinanced multiple times, fell under immediate review. Default notices followed. Foreclosure proceedings initiated within days. Credit agencies updated records fast. Joint accounts frozen. Lines closed. Scores plummeted hundreds of points overnight. New applications denied automatically. Even basic utilities flagged for deposits. Bianca's job at the local real estate firm ended abruptly. Whispers started among colleagues and clients after a cousin mentioned the family drama at a community event. Word traveled through neighborhood networks, chamber meetings, open houses. By the time management called her in, listings had dried up. Terminations cited reputational risk to the brand. No severance beyond standard. Marcus distanced himself almost immediately. Phone calls went unanswered. social media connections removed. Any digital trail linking him to the transfer draft disappeared, files deleted, messages unsent. He claimed ignorance when pressed by mutual acquaintances, insisting he'd only been offering casual advice. No one pushed further. Mother tried reaching out first. 3 calls in one evening, voice messages shaky, pleas for understanding, promises to repay somehow, questions about whether I could talk to someone at the bank. I let them go to voicemail, then blocked the number. Bianca's messages came next. Texts at odd hours, accusations of betrayal, reminders of childhood sacrifices, demands for explanations I owed as a daughter and sister, threats of legal penalties that never materialized, each one shorter, angrier. I blocked her, too. The management firm handled the rest efficiently. A professional team was on site within the week, inventorying contents, changing locks, coordinating maintenance. Security cameras were upgraded, rental inquiries for off-season use already incoming. The penthouse was leased to a corporate client for Fashion Week overflow, generating immediate revenue. The upstate farmland was contracted to a trusted local operator who actually knew the soil. Statements arrived regularly. Income projections, expense reports, tax filings prepared. Everything ran smoothly, detached from personal chaos. Occasional updates from distant relatives trickled in, second-hand accounts of moving trucks at the Albany house, belongings boxed hastily. Mother staying with an aunt temporarily, looking older and smaller. Bianca spotted apartment hunting alone, her designer bags replaced by practical totes. No direct contact attempted after the blocks. I reviewed the reports from my studio. Sketches spread across the table for an upcoming collection. The numbers were clean, predictable, no surprises. The distance felt final, no more unexpected calls, no explanations needed, no pull to intervene. The consequences unfolded exactly as the law allowed: impersonal, thorough, irreversible. One late fall afternoon, with the lake wind whipping red pine needles across the road, I drove to the small cemetery near the compound. The gates were unlocked as always, the gravel path crunching under my tires. I parked under the old oaks and walked the short distance to Grandpa's plot. The stone was simple. His name, dates, a short line about loving the water. Fresh dirt had settled long ago. Now wildflowers edged the grass, resilient against the frost. I stood there in the chill, coat pulled tight. The breeze carried mist off the lake, cool against my face. No long speech came out. I didn't rehash the arguments or the fallout, just quiet words barely above the wind. Thank you for giving me the tools to protect myself. The leaves rustled overhead like an answer. Time had passed since everything unraveled. Weekends now belonged to me alone at the compound. I'd drive up Friday evenings after wrapping shows or fittings, unlock the main house, and let the silence settle. Mornings started with coffee on the deck, watching fog lift off the water. No schedules forced on me, no voices questioning choices, just the steady rhythm of waves against the dock posts. Afternoons meant long walks along the shoreline trails. Grandpa maintained himself. I'd follow the same paths, boots sinking into pine needles, breathing air sharp with cold. The boathouse stood empty but secure, canoes covered for winter. Evenings were for the fireplace. I'd light it the way he taught me kindling first. Logs crossed and sit with a book or sketches spread out. Flames cracked and popped. Outside, stars came clear over the lake, brighter than in the city. Peace came from clear lines drawn, cutting off those who only took. Expectations, guilt, demands all left space for something real. No more energy drained justifying my life, my career, my absence or presence. Regret never surfaced. Not when reports showed the Albany house sold at auction. Not when distant updates mentioned new apartments or job hunts. Not even when old mutual contacts asked if I'd reconsider. The choice was the only one that preserved dignity. Grandpa understood that. He built safeguards not for wealth alone, but for freedom from manipulation. Standing at the grave longer than planned, I placed a small bundle of pine branches at the base. Something natural, nothing store-bought. The wind picked up, scattering needles across the stone. I turned back toward the car. The drive home would be dark soon, headlights cutting through trees. But the compound waited whenever I needed it. Quiet, maintained, mine. Self-respect and independence. That was the true gift he left. Enforcing boundaries honored it best. No second thoughts. No looking back. The lake wind followed me all the way to the gate. The final stretch of road leading away from the Aspen Ridge compound was always the darkest, the ancient pines leaning in like silent sentinels. But tonight, the darkness didn't feel oppressive. It felt protective, a barrier between the life I had chosen and the chaos I had left behind. Grandpa Arthur had known. He had seen the fault lines in our family long before the earthquake hit. He knew that love without boundaries was just an invitation for exploitation. The secret trust wasn't just about preserving assets, it was about preserving me. I thought about the empty chair at the dining table, the one where he used to sit. For years, I had felt guilty for leaving, for chasing a career in a city that felt a world away from this valley. But he had never seen it as abandonment. He saw it as flight. And you don't clip the wings of a bird you love, you build them a safe place to land. The heater in my car hummed, a steady companion as I merged onto the highway. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, a notification from the security system at the lake house. Asterisk, system armed. All zones secure. Asterisk. I smiled, a small, genuine expression that reached my eyes. The legal battle was over. The emotional toll had been paid. The family drama that had consumed so much oxygen was finally suffocated by the truth. I wasn't just the sole beneficiary of a $12.5 million estate. I was the beneficiary of a lesson that money couldn't buy, that your true family are the ones who respect your path, not the ones who try to pave over it for their own convenience. As the city lights of Manhattan appeared on the horizon hours later, glittering like diamonds on black velvet, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not for the penthouse or the portfolio, but for the permission to be myself without apology. Karma had coiled its way through our lives, tightening around those who acted out of greed and releasing those who acted out of integrity. The cycle was complete. I turned up the radio, a jazz track playing softly, and drove into the city that never sleeps, knowing that back in the mountains, the lake was sleeping peacefully under the stars, waiting for my return. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please like and subscribe to Karma's Coils. Share your own family drama stories in the comments below. We read every single one. Until next time, remember, the truth always has a way of coming to the surface, usually right when you least expect it.